The Redmi Note series has always been synonymous with value for money, offering features and specifications that are a step above what you'd get with the Redmi series, while still remaining affordable enough for most people. Now the new Redmi Note 10 Pro Max steps up with a 108 megapixel camera and crosses the 20,000 rupee mark for the first time. Considering that this is the only difference between the Redmi Note 10 Pro Max and the Redmi Note 10 Pro, does it still make sense for a mainstream phone? We're about to find out. You're watching Gadgets 360 and this is our review of the new Redmi Note 10 Pro Max. If this video helps you in any way, please do consider subscribing to our channel and hitting the bell icon so you know whenever we post another one. Before we dive into the review, let's price the Redmi Note 10 Pro Max. Blurring the line between mainstream and premium, it starts at 18,999 rupees for the variant with 6GB of RAM and 64GB of storage. You pay very little more, 19,999 rupees for the same 6GB of RAM but double the storage at 128GB. The most expensive variant actually crosses the 20,000 rupee mark for the first time, costing 21,999 rupees for 8GB of RAM and 128GB of storage. With that out of the way, now let's talk about design. The Redmi Note 10 Pro Max boasts of Xiaomi's new Evolve design language. This can be seen mainly around the frame and the camera module of the Redmi Note 10 series. The glass rear panel is curved at the sides and molded around the bulge, accommodating the fingerprint sensor and volume rocker, making for a very slick look. The Dark Knight color version, which I have, has a glossy texture and is a total fingerprint magnet. It's also kind of slippery, so you may want to use it with a protective case. The phone also comes in Mystic Bronze and Glacial Blue color options, which have a frosted glass finish. The defining feature of the Redmi Note 10 Pro Max is of course the 108 megapixel camera, which is highlighted with a bright silver surround. The module has a two-tier design to account for the camera's thickness, but unfortunately this does mean that the phone isn't very steady or easy to use when it's lying flat on a table. You also get an IP53 rating for water and dust resistance, which is always good to see. I'm quite impressed with the screen that the Redmi Note 10 Pro Max ships with. This is a 6.67-inch Full HD Plus Super AMOLED panel with full DCI-P3 color gamut coverage, a 120Hz maximum refresh rate, and HDR10 support. Brightness goes up to 1200 nits. Despite the large screen, the Redmi Note 10 Pro Max is fairly easy to handle. The display quality really stands out. It is bright and crisp with everything looking slick. Colors pop nicely and blacks are quite deep, making for good contrast. The only thing that detracts from the video experience is the shiny ring around the front camera. The always-on display implementation is a bit strange since it doesn't actually always stay on. You have to tap the screen to bring it up and it only stays on for a few seconds, which means it's no better than a lock screen. Now let's go over the specifications of the Redmi Note 10 Pro Max. It's powered by the Qualcomm Snapdragon 732G SoC, which should be more than enough for everyday tasks as well as gaming. Do note that the 732G isn't a 5G capable SoC, and if you think that's a deal breaker, you might want to consider the Mi 10i 5G instead. As for software, the Redmi Note 10 Pro Max ships with MIUI 12.0.6 on top of Android 11. It has a lot of features and customizations that we have already talked about in our Redmi Note 10 review, so do check that out as well. We've complained for years about the amount of advertising and promotional content there is in MIUI, from the glance content on the lock screen to constant notifications from certain apps. While this isn't as bad as we've encountered in the past, the upcoming MIUI 12.5 promises to dispense with all of this entirely. For now, you'll have to deal with the promotional notifications from Xiaomi's Get App Store and the Themes app. My device was running the February 2021 Android security patch, which is okay. Xiaomi has indicated but not formally promised that you should be able to get a security update at least once a quarter and one or two major Android updates over the next few years. I do hope the MIUI 12.5 update arrives soon. Coming to the performance, you won't have any trouble with everyday apps. My review unit had 6GB of RAM and even heavy multitasking wasn't an issue. Call of Duty Mobile and Asphalt 9 Legends ran smoothly even at high quality settings. The 5020 mAh battery can take you through a full day with a little bit left over for the next morning. If you play a lot of games, stream media and take a lot of photos and videos, you should still be able to make one charge last a full day. In our HD video loop test, the Redmi Note 10 Pro Max lasted for 17 hours and 1 minute. When plugged in with the bundled 33-watt charger, it went from 0 to 44% in 30 minutes and 84% in 60 minutes. And now let's talk about the star of the show, which is undoubtedly the 108-megapixel main camera. It's based on the same Samsung HM2 sensor as the Mi 10i's main camera, but there are some differences in the optics here, such as an f1.9 aperture and 6p lens. Just as interesting though is the 5-megapixel super macro camera, which also boasts of 2x magnification. This should allow you to get macro shots from farther away than usual. You also get a standard 8-megapixel ultra-wide camera and a 2-megapixel depth sensor. There's quite a lot going on in the camera app and even some modes that you don't get on the lower-end Redmi Note 10, including a vlog mode that lets you package graphics, background music and even effects into a single clip just by tapping the shutter button a few times. Clone and dual modes, as their names suggest, let you create multi-exposure shots and superimpose video from the front and rear cameras respectively. Coming to photo quality, we can see that the primary camera does a good job when it comes to detail, exposure and color reproduction. You should be happy with the results given the price of this phone. Close-ups work best of course, but even objects at a distance look fairly good at the default 12-megapixel resolution. Just remember that shots taken at 108 megapixels will consume about 20 MB of space on average. While you can magnify photos much more before losing definition, you can't really expect to crop distant objects to simulate optical zoom. Results also tend to be a little less sharp at the full resolution. The wide-angle camera, as expected, captures duller shots with poorer contrast. You can adjust the depth effect before or after taking a shot in portrait mode, and results are good but not especially great. Surprisingly, the macro camera doesn't feel like an afterthought, which tends to be the case with several smartphones. It does require a bit of awkward guesswork and results can be disappointing sometimes, but when the focus was just right and the subject was nicely framed, my shots came out looking spectacular, with exactly the kind of detail and definition that make macro shots so compelling. This might be the best implementation of a dedicated macro camera that I've used so far on a smartphone. Night mode can make a pretty big difference to low light shots, but detail isn't that great no matter whether it's on or off. Color tone wasn't very natural looking, especially in 108 megapixel mode. Focus was also harder to get right at the full resolution. The wide-angle camera does of course capture duller, darker shots, but given enough ambient light, these were actually not too bad. The 16 megapixel front camera is decent in the daytime, but don't expect the most natural looking skin tones. Beautification is on by default. Selfie portraits had good depth of field with accurate edge detection. Video recording goes up to 4K at 30 FPS. Full HD video is stabilized, but 4K video isn't. Quality is decent enough in the daytime, even with wide-angle full HD video. At night, a good amount of detail was captured, but colors tended to get pumped up to unrealistic levels. There was shimmer at full HD, while 4K video was very shaky. To sum it up, Xiaomi usually pitches its Redmi Note series phones as all-rounders, but the Redmi Note 10 Pro Max clearly wants to up the ante specifically with its 108-megapixel rear camera. I'm not entirely convinced that this will be worth the 3000 rupee premium over the Redmi Note 10 Pro, which is otherwise identical. Battery life could have been better and the fingerprint sensor might become annoying, but these issues are relatively easy to live with. Still, that just makes me want to recommend its considerably less expensive twin, the Redmi Note 10 Pro, rather than this phone itself, as all the strengths of this phone apply to that model as well. If you do want the 108 megapixel camera though, this seems like it could be a good option for many people. Realme has also just launched its Realme 8 Pro and the Realme X7 is in the same ballpark too. If you look at the overall market, the Redmi Note 10 Pro Max seems to serve a very small niche. It is a great phone, but you also have the Redmi Note 10 Pro and the Mi 10i from Xiaomi, which offer you either cost savings or a beefier package for not that much more money. So that pretty much wraps up our review. If you're looking for more smartphone recommendations, do check out our phone reviews playlist, and of course for all things tech, do stay tuned to Gadgets360.com.